All right, let me see what time it is here. All right, good afternoon. I hereby call this meeting, the special meeting of the Nacogdoches ISD Board of Trustees by video conference to order. A quorum of the following board members is present. Myself, Vice President James Matoya. Here. Secretary Mindy Winslow. Here. Leah Beth Abt.
Here.
Reverend James Irvin.
Here.
Dr. Tyrell Groman.
Here.
And Mr. Farshid Nerman.
Here.
Thank you. On March the 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow for telephone or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus. In accordance to those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference. We are meeting using the Zoom software application, which allows two-way communication for members of the public. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who followed instructions on the meeting notice for registering to speak during the public comment will be given that opportunity. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call, please follow instructions on the meeting notice. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practical. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be made available to the public at a later date. The Zoom software application allows for people to view and interact. I want to apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate these unprecedented conditions. And thank you for your patience. I know we're getting started just a few minutes late due to a few technical difficulties, so thank you for your patience and tuning in. If you have any questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma@oag.texas.gov. We did not receive any requests to address the board for public comment tonight. And the first item on the agenda is board member recognition. And I will call on Dr. Audrey Young to make tonight's special presentation. Dr. Young, are you with us?
I am. Thank you. President Fitch, Superintendent Trujillo, members of the Nacogdoches ISD Board of Trustees. I'm Audrey Young, and you usually know me as the Director of Student Support Services for Nacogdoches ISD. But tonight, I am representing the Board of Directors for the Texas Association of School Boards Leadership Program, Leadership TASB. It is my pleasure tonight to recognize one of your colleagues who recently completed the Leadership TASB course of study. Leadership TASB began in 1993 as a way to offer advanced leadership training to board members. Leadership TASB is nationally recognized as the premier leadership training program sponsored by the Texas Association of School Boards. Upon successful completion of the course of study, the recognition of Master Trustee is bestowed. Our program is a highly selective program where only a small percentage of applicants is accepted as a member of a cohort. Usually, over a 10-month period, the class meets 5 times in 5 different Texas cities. However, this year, as we all know, it has been very unusual. The class usually hears from nationally recognized speakers, tour school districts, and conduct research on a topic of relevance to Texas school trustees. Class members represent districts from all parts of Texas and varying sizes of student enrollment and varying levels of property wealth. Leadership TASB asks your board member to work a little harder, to be challenged with new thoughts, and to renew their commitment to make a difference on behalf of the school children of Nacogdoches ISD. Tonight, it is my honor, as I represent the Executive Board for Leadership TASB, to recognize Dr. Tyrell Groman as he joins the ranks of more than 700 Leadership TASB alum as a Master Trustee. I'm pleased to present Dr. Groman with this official certificate as a lifetime member of the Leadership TASB Alumni Association. Congratulations, Dr. Groteman. You get a pin too. And your alumni certificate. So thank you very much.
The board and also to the district and to this community for taking part in my learning experience. It's a very humbling thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Groteman, and we appreciate the investment of time and energy that you put into that, and for bringing that information back to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There's been 7 graduations. That's why I was late. I was the 7th one virtually. Only 3 out of the total number did not go to a physical location graduate.
All right. We will now move on to the discussion action agenda. The first item tonight is consideration of NISD's asynchronous learning plan for 2020-2021. Dr. Hill.
Good evening, President Fitch, Superintendent Trujillo, and Board of Trustees. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present our plan to you this evening. So this
One moment, Dr. Hill.
The only problem I'm having with this view is that you cannot see the speaker now.
Okay, you wanna adjust?
I don't know if I do. Oh,
See what you can do there. Hold on just 1 second, Dr. Hill.
yes, ma'am.
I thought it would be better, but I don't know.
Will it slide one
Just
more?
slide it, maybe.
Will it slide one
The other
more?
one, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, we just wanted to see what you were saying.
Thanks, Mindy. Thanks.
You're on a big screen now.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's horrible.
Oh, all right, Dr. Hill, please continue. Thank you for your patience.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Fitch. So this is a requirement from TEA, and there are a couple of options that we could go with, and one is being synchronous and one is being asynchronous. And so we have elected to go with asynchronous. So this process started back in July 15th is when the window of TEA accepting asynchronous plans from across the state. And so there is a grace period through the end of the first semester for us, or the end of the third 6 weeks grading period for us to get this submitted to TEA and then receive their feedback. It's my understanding that once the board approves it and we submit it, which we plan to do tomorrow, unless there are some additions or tweaks that we need to make, TEA will respond to us anywhere between 30 and 45 days. Regarding approval, or if there are some additional topics that we need to cover. So what I did this evening for you is I've attached, Ms. Anderson, excuse me, has attached 2 different documents. One is the actual learning plan itself, and the second one is a TEA document that was given to us back on July 16th, or I'm sorry, July 6th. And so it just talks about a planning summary. So I wanted you to have that as almost like a rubric to go through, because it's just some good talking points of things that we needed to make sure that we clearly identified and addressed in our asynchronous plan. So basically the difference between asynchronous learning and asynchronous is, think of synchronous as in person, what we do typically on a normal day if we have on-campus learners, whereas asynchronous is pre-recorded videos, in our case, which would be posted to our LMS, which is either Seesaw or Canvas, depending upon the appropriate grade level. And so those are defined for you on page, I believe it's on page 1 of the plan, just in case you forget as we go through. There is a lot of narrative and a lot of words, but this evening I'll try to do my best to summarize the document. So as a requirement, there are 4 sections that we had to address, those being the instructional schedule, material design, student progress, and implementation. So I'll briefly give you a summary of what we've included in our plan. Of course, you can lay it side by side to the plan summary document if you would like. In the instructional schedule section, you'll see a series of sample asynchronous schedules that our students who are remote learners would follow. You'll see that the time, the start and the ending times do mimic our existing start and stop time for our on-campus learners. You'll also see the number of minutes that are required for each of those grade spans. In some instances, you'll see, a plus sign at the end of them. That's just to let us know that we've gone beyond the required number of minutes as required to interact with the content required by TEA. Then you'll also notice, and it sounds very higher education-like with office hours. And so you'll see some generic language like office hours can be before, after school, and during the conference periods. Whenever I interpret that, that's no different than if you were if I were a teacher and having a scheduled conference sometimes, or with a parent meeting that could take place at the beginning of school on a given day. It might take place after school, or it might take place during the conference period. What we do want to ensure is that regardless of whether our teachers are on campus, teaching on campus learners or remote learners, they are definitely guaranteed the 450 minutes of instructional planning, which is required by the state every 2 weeks. So I want to make sure that that's noted. And the office hours, it's addressed in a couple of areas. We did not delineate office hours because we would like for the teachers to do that and then communicate those office hours to those students and their parents so that they can build the best schedule for them. As you go on through the document, you get to the materials section. This one has a series of tables in it, and we felt it was very important to not only look at the instructional materials that we have adopted here in NISD, whether they're online or print. We wanted to give both of those. They are in grade span and they are by subject, but we also thought it was important to talk about their primary purpose for using those documents. So again, you're going to see several different lists. Also included in that material design section is some lesson preparation guidance, which would be no different than what we've done for the last couple of years in NISD, following backwards design, looking at the 4 questions of professional learning communities. And then it also talks about feedback timelines. And we'll talk a little bit about student feedback here in just a moment. As we move on to the 3rd section, you get into the student progress. And that's where we're looking at the requirements regarding engagement measures. That's kind of a new set of terminology for us that's primarily related to asynchronous plans and how we get student attendance. So I'm going to pause for a minute, and if you have the document pulled up on your computer, I might ask you just to turn to page 24 in the document, because there are 3 different engagement measures that we will use. The first one is the daily progress within the LMS, which is either Canvas or Seesaw. And that could be a completing of an assignment. It could be answering maybe a posting of some sort, answering a question. The second way a student can be counted absent, and let me make that clear, engagement measures equate to whether or not a student can be counted present or absent. The second way is for daily progress via student-teacher interaction. That could be via the LMS. It could also be in a Google Meet from a synchronous standpoint, whereas maybe the teacher is doing a live session, whether it's one-on-one tutorials. It could be a parent-teacher conference. It could be tutorials, small group instruction. And then the third one is the completion or submission of assignments via the LMS, but it could also mean that they emailed an assignment to the teacher as well. So those are the 3 ways for a remote learner in this asynchronous learning environment can be counted as present.
Do they have to meet all 3 of them or just one of the 3?
One of the 3. One of the 3. And we've been asked, by several if we're going to limit it to, one of the 3, and we would like to leave it wide open because it really needs to be on an individual teacher basis, and then they need to decide what's best for their classroom or individual students. So thank you very much for that clarification point. Also within that particular section of student progress, we look at, it kind of continues on with our material design when we were talking a little bit about lesson preparation, how we follow the teach, assess cycle. So I've put that graphic in there just in case anyone was unfamiliar with that. Of course, backwards design is noted. Again, nothing's changed over the past couple of years. So from a planning or a designing of lessons, the only thing that which absolutely will be different is we're building them in the LMS as we move forward. The last thing we have to ensure in student progress section is that our grading guidelines will remain the same for both remote and on-campus learners. And so after the potential approval of this plan this evening, the grading guidelines will be updated to denote the specific language of the engagement measures in the grading guidelines. And then those will be posted pretty quickly on the website. The last section in the plan is regarding implementation. And that's where we get into some of our professional development that has been available to teachers in August. Some of it began back at the end of June and July with the identification or the revision of the essential standards for the core content areas. And then I am so pleased to let you know this evening that our Seesaw, which is our LMS for the pre-K through grade 2 and Canvas for grades 3 through 12, that training has been ongoing this week. It's been one day for elementary, one day for middle, and one for high school. And those are through Region 7. So it's a live session with Region 7. And then there have also been some self-paced sessions that have rolled out to the teachers. And so
how are the teachers responding to it? I mean,
I have heard today was the first day and it was elementary, and according to our digital learning specialist, they said it went very, very well. And so Region 7 has recorded it for us, and we're going to put it in our program. You heard a little bit about it last night, called EduHero, and that's our kind of our online portal for both compliance and some virtual or online PD. So I hear it really well. So I'm anxious to watch the video just to, hear some of the Q&As. So that's what I know. Tomorrow is middle school, Thursday is high school. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it's, that it's going very well. So right now I haven't heard anything negative. So I'm going to keep thinking in a positive manner. And then lastly, we get to the last step, and that's the submission of this plan to TEA. And as I described earlier, once it is submitted, we should hear something within about 45 days. So I'm going to pause because I know that was a quick summarization, but I know it's a lengthy plan with lots of narrative, and I'll pause and see if you guys have any questions.
Oh, I've got a ton of them.
Don't we all?
I'm going to do my best to answer them for you.
I was just reading some of these responsibilities. I was hoping that you might be able to explain in a little bit more detail, going through one of these schedules, what that might, kind of a day in the life of what that may look like for our student who is at home.
Sure. So I'll just look at page 3 and do the early childhood ECSE, formerly PPCD, pre-K, Head Start through grade 2. So you'll notice on the far left-hand column, you've got a little legend there and you've got some symbols. I did notice a mistake since it had been uploaded. I don't think it's on this one, but if it is, I'll catch it and let you all know. It's been corrected on my document that once approved, we'll submit to TEA. So it begins with a 7:30 to 8, which is an asynchronous. And so that's just a good opportunity. It's almost kind of like our old-fashioned homeroom, where we come in and maybe we just do not necessarily a roll call, but really build the relationships with the kids, get to know the kids, maybe even engage in some social emotional learning opportunities with them. That would just be a good opportunity for us to, introduce ourselves, maybe introduce where we're going for the day, where we're going in this particular unit of study.
All
Then
right.
you see 8 to 9:30.
Wait. Sorry. On that, so that is an asynchronous classroom connection in the morning. So that's a pre-recorded video that the student will log on and watch. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And likely, President Fitch, it could be that maybe there's an activity to engage, gauge, how the students are feeling for that particular day, that maybe there's a really quick question that they could respond. And then the teacher could watch that, maybe watch the response or look at their response, and then maybe reach out to them in a synchronous manner. If there was something that was maybe a little alarming, or perhaps it was a previous check of prior learning from the previous day, and maybe they need to circle back with them in a live session.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. Will the students be, they'll have their own teacher though, right? And their own teacher will have this pre-recorded lesson and they'll watch and stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
How are the teachers, is this double duty for them? To have
So
to record and then also in the classroom be teaching?
it's our recommendation, and we, in part of our enrollment process, we ask the students and their parents, how many of
Yeah.
you are going to be on-campus learning and remote learning. So
Okay.
yesterday was kind of the soft deadline that TEA says, parents can change up to 2 weeks prior to the first day of instruction. So we use that information for planning. So to answer your question, it's almost hard to know because we still have so many parents that haven't registered and answered those questions that I hate to say we don't know the number of exact students that will show up, but it is my intent for us to either designate remote teachers and or on-campus teachers so that
Okay.
double duty as if you're talking about. Now,
Except won't that be a problem then, because you've also offered a change of mind, like, what was it, 9 weeks in? Let's say someone wants to start out distant learning, but then they want to have face-to-face. Well, will they have a new teacher then? This might be hard for little kids.
they could potentially have a new teacher. So you bring up a
Okay.
good point, meaning that if a student goes from remote learning to on, they have to wait till the end of the grading period, which for us is 6 weeks.
Right. Okay. 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad that you got that because I did want to make that clear. It is not a guarantee that they will have the same teacher. Of course, we will, but
If you have some teachers are doing long and some aren't, then they're going to have a different teacher. And that would be something they would have to consider, that all of a sudden okay. All right.
what we will have to do, just in 100% honesty, is once we get a good idea of the number of on-campus and remote learners, and it could be that if I'm a teacher, I may start out as on campus, but I may need you to switch to remote just to keep that idea of not doing maybe the double duty.
Okay, I see. Also, are we still planning to do this slow, I can't even remember the term that Dr. Tree, you know what I'm talking about? Where a teacher is going to start out with just 5 and then build to that, of those who want to do face-to-face. All right, so let's say you want to do face-to-face, but your child is not being called in for the first couple of weeks because the teacher is slowly bringing in those with a greater need. Who's teaching them? Or then they get the long distance teacher instead for a while?
I know you've been meeting with the principals. You want to take that question?
Yeah, the process that we're looking at now, everything you're asking is contingent upon first on choice from parents. Parents are wanting to do the face-to-face, then this is the plan that we're doing here. We want to make sure we're talking clearly with what's happening away from the campus. When we start blending the conversation about coming to school, then we are no longer talking about the asynchronous plan. So I'm going to hold off on answering that question because I want us to really focus on the asynchronous plan.
I understand. That sounds good.
Otherwise, if we start talking about both, then it can complicate the whole conversation. What we're doing today is we have to approve or evaluate the asynchronous plan that we're going to submit to TEA. And then we can talk about what it looks like on campuses. And I'm working with the principals with what that looks like. But the purpose for this evening is to look at making sure we have the plan for the asynchronous. Let's go that direction, if you allow us.
Yeah, that's good. Got it.
So in all actuality, we don't know what this is going to look like until we put it in action. So tonight, we just want our permission to get it started, so then we can evaluate it and see what it looked like once we start practicing.
Absolutely, and that's what's happening with our principals right now. We're actually, for whatever reason, we have folks that are not communicated whether they're going to go online, face-to-face, And so we've got to put measures in place. So one of the plans that we have, so you'll see is, and once again, this is a process campuses are doing, we're looking at a mail out, a postcard. So if the postcard comes back to us, then we know we have a bad address. If the postcard goes out and gives instructions with a website to do the online registration, get on there, answer the question whether they're going to do face-to-face or online, it gives us much more of a solid number of individuals. But the plan remains the same. This is the plan for if they make the decision to do home instruction and what that would look like. And that is the purpose of what we're trying to do is, what does that home plan look like? Because what the commissioner doesn't want is what we did last year, where the onus was put on the parents. And we want to make sure that we are not putting that on the parents. We are working that through our plan as a district, which is either by a teacher that's designed to be the asynchronous instruction, or in some situations, because we may have, depending on the number, we definitely, and it's not going to be a Nacogdoches issue, it's a statewide issue, where you'll have an individual that is doing asynchronous instruction as well as meeting the needs in the classroom teaching. And so there, you may have that. So I want to be clear in that we're not going to separate the two if the numbers dictate otherwise. But that's not going to be just a Nacogdoches ISD issue. It's across the state when you're looking at the asynchronous as well as face-to-face.
So hearing what you're saying, the idea is if I have a child, a kindergartner, you're gonna kind of hand me the schedule, and with the technology, then the iPad, they'll be able, the expectation is that student will be able to walk through each one of these activities during the day.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And have, and the lessons are whatever pre-recorded, so they won't have an opportunity to have a live session while they're working from home.
Exactly. The synchronous is not, when you hear Dr. Hill presenting this, the reason we can't, and some districts can do the synchronous, but the reason we can't do the synchronous is that at 8 o'clock, when the teacher's there, the students are there at 8 o'clock. And that kind of ties it up so that we can actually, you see the schedule, but still the parents are going to have the ability to look at the schedule that we have, put the time that we have that is there, and they have activities. And you talked about the 3 types of attendance you can take. There's where those tie in. If there's a discussion question, or if there's an activity they're working on, or they're emailing something back to the teacher, then they're able to do some of that with the folks. But even though you see the schedule that's there, it kind of gives a guidance to the parents as to what's going on in the classroom.
Right. So while this is what the classroom would look like, if I'm a home learner and I'm a parent and I want to start school at 10 a.m. instead of 7:30 a.m., I still walk through this same schedule.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
It doesn't affect, it still is the same check-ins, the same attendance.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And that's why we went.
Except it looks like some of these are synchronous where they have, I mean, I'm looking at the Head Start kindergarten grade 2, that there are some blocks of time where it's not pre-recorded and there would be a little interaction.
And it could be, absolutely. We're going to leave that up to the teacher to make the best decision on what they need. This is just an option that if we're doing, guided reading groups, it could be that I mix my remote learners and my on-campus, perhaps, just a suggestion, just a thought, or an option rather, right?
You're giving maximum flexibility to the classroom teacher.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
So potentially a teacher could be doing lessons pre-recorded and live, because you got your live students here at school, but then you're pre-recording your lesson.
Could be, yes, ma'am.
Or they could be having pre-recorded and then they're live or with their other distant learning students, right? If you have some teachers who are just doing distance learning, then it might be like a Zoom thing.
Could
So
be.
they wouldn't have, I don't know. But we're just worried about whether or not we've got a curriculum in line that's okay, that's what we're going to concentrate on. Okay.
I think there's a lot, and you guys are asking a lot of great questions that we've also asked. And it's one of those things that while we have a great plan and we think that it aligns with what TEA says, once you put the plan in place, then you begin to see, some areas that need additional tweaking or additional clarification, or, oh, we thought that was going to work, but it didn't work. And so, yes, ma'am.
Dr. Hill.
Yes, sir.
There's some pre-recorded instructions given. And however, the student doesn't understand it clearly and have a lot of questions and does not get the response immediately. Wouldn't discourage him or her.
Tell me that last part. I'm so sorry.
If they don't understand
Yes.
and they get frustrated because there is no explanation and no one around the house can help them, would not get that frustrated and they quit basically on that session?
They could potentially get frustrated. We would hope that we would build in some semblance of support, whether that's through our classroom connection or some semblance of an engagement activity that the teacher would somehow be alerted, whether it was via email or just seeing their lack of progress, that the teacher would then reach out to that individual student and or the parent and offer that one-on-one support.
If I may, the LMS that we're utilizing, they're going to be able to use it to see the activity or the inactivity that students are having. You also notice in the schedule, we have office hours that are there. So we're not necessarily just waiting for the student to reach out to the teacher. The teacher has also that obligation to reach out to the student. So if you're looking at this LMS and you're seeing no activity, nothing's been done, then we're obligated as a district to reach out because we get no attendance funding for that student. So we've got to figure out what's happening with the student and be able to engage that in a different way. And then we may have to conference with the family about the asynchronous plan. The home plan is not quite working. So how do we need to work so that they might be coming to school rather than being at the house?
Yes, sir. I clearly understand exactly. My personal concern is, I know with their presence, we get daily attendance.
Yes.
However, under no circumstance I want that money coming sacrifices their learning education to those kids.
Yeah.
That might make sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we'll be reaching out to them. And that's why in the schedule, you'll see several breaks that are there for the parents, for the teacher to have office hours. That's something that TEA is expecting us to have, is to have that availability of office hours where teachers can reach out to the family and find out what's going on. But just the fact to make sure that we're clear, that's why we have to reach out, is because just because they're enrolled doesn't mean that we're meeting their needs. We've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can and clearly understand that there's a lot of moving parts and some of it deals with funding. That's why we want to make sure that folks don't pick the plan just because that's what they think needs to be happening for the student. They really know how we're meeting them educationally as well.
It seems to me that this is really going to increase the demand on our social workers and our counselors.
Very much so, I think.
Do you see that?
I-
Because, I mean, the teacher is the educational leader, but I see a lot of potential gaps in there that.
I would foresee that they would probably, the counselors and the social workers would probably need to be more available to families. You know?
Mhm.
I'm kind of worried about like interventions and getting behind, and I don't know, my concern about the office hours is that enough? Is that gonna be enough?
Just remember though, this is in the transition as we move back into face-to-face. This is not the full year. This is something that we have to have a plan. And the plan is, as we hopefully start seeing the decrease and we get the clearance and everything gets worked out, then we're going into face-to-face. That's basically what it is. Now, I would share that concern if it was, this is the way we're gonna do the whole year, is we're doing more of a virtual environment. Then we've got to look at all kinds of services that we have to provide for our families as well as.
You're making the assumption then that we'll be back to school fully by the end of this year.
Yes.
That's a big leap, isn't it?
Well, I think that assumption is being made across the country.
So do you foresee then TEA at some point in the year saying virtual learning is no longer an option?
I don't, because we have to have an opportunity for that percentage of families
Mhm.
that no longer, or they don't feel comfortable, they don't have the space for that. But by then, we will have a lot of the pieces and parts that we don't have solidified. One-on-one devices, connectivity, and as we're doing that, then there's where, as a board, we'll have to evaluate, do we have to have a presence now that's virtual? Where districts in the past, we've not had that. And if we don't create that opportunity, then we have the possibility of losing our learners to entities that are maximizing their virtual presence.
Yeah.
And that's,
It feels very much to me like a paradigm shift.
it is.
It is
And
very much.
and I'm just gonna kind of put this out on the table. My fear in this is I know we've got kids that will do great under this plan.
Yeah.
I also fear though that we've got a lot of kids that won't. And I fear that that gap that we've struggled with, not only in our community, in the state, in the country, that gap, that this is gonna grow that gap. And I don't know what the solution is to that, but, absolutely a fear that I feel as I'm reviewing this.
I think it's a fear we all feel, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If I could just implement this or insert this rather, we're facing something that we're gonna say that we've never seen before in our lives in this COVID-19. There is nothing, in my opinion, that can replace synchronous learning, face-to-face in the classroom. But I think we are being called upon now to help provide options for our students and for our kids to try to get some kind of education other than what took place in the spring. When we shut down, we sent the kids home, and that was it. We really had no plan. And so I want to applaud administration
Oh, absolutely.
for giving us a plan, at least to start with. I know we don't have all the answers, but we never will if we don't give it a try.
Yes, sir.
We never will if we don't, see what, how it can fit our community. And I'm sure, Ms. Fitz, you're absolutely right. There's no doubt in my mind that that gap is probably going to broaden. Because I'm sure that there are parents, not the students, the students don't have the option of making the decision whether they're synchronous or asynchronous, only the parents, as it relates to going to class or staying at home. So if the parents decide to do that at home, then I hope they're willing to take on some responsibility to aid the teacher in overseeing that student and that child's education. So again, I just applaud it. I know we don't know. As I looked through this earlier, there's no way we're gonna know the outcome until we implement it and, I guess, hands-on and feel our way through it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that, because I in no way want to take away from all of the work, the extremely hard work that went into creating this very impressive document. So please don't take my comments that way.
I also want to say that our question is getting informed rather than indicating there is an opposition.
100%.
I find it to be learned. So one question I have basically is, how do we evaluate the teacher's work? How does it get evaluated?
We're going now, we still use the instrument of T-test.
Yes.
And that's the component that the other half is critically important as well, is we're talking about the student side of it and what's going to frustrate them as far as going through learning. But we also need to think about our teachers.
Yes.
Because in this transition of doing this, to give you an example, we have a platform that's virtual. And what I don't want to lose teachers to that virtual platform. Because there, all they have to do is do it virtually. They don't have to exist in a virtual environment as well as face-to-face. So that's why we've got to be able to look at down the road as we're looking at this, what is our long-term investment with what virtual is going to look like? so that we might have a commitment for some families that are seeking virtual, and we don't lose the kids. But most importantly, we don't lose our greatest resource, which is our teachers. And so that's the part that we want to look at. And onboarding this is going to tax, it's going to tax our teachers, because some of them are going to have to live in the face-to-face world, and they're also going to exist in the virtual world with the kids that are in those classrooms. And we have kids that might want to change teachers, but we also have some families going to say, no, I want my child to remain with this one teacher. And so we're going to have to navigate this world as they're looking at it. So we've got to think about the teachers when it comes to the evaluation and what that looks like, because their platform with T-tests and the way it's done is it's always been classroom observation. Right. But now you're observing and you're looking at artifacts that are no longer face-to-face. They're living in a virtual environment. How effective are we reaching out to our families to onboard kids that are not being successful, or including them to participate when they're not choosing to participate, or they're dropping off? How are we taking care of those kids that are disengaged in a virtual environment? So as we are looking at that, we're also going to have to see, what does that rubric look like? Because I will tell you that rubric doesn't exist right now. Not T-tests. It doesn't exist on the virtual side of it. So, but we want to make sure that we are utilizing and interpreting some of that. So our evaluators that are looking at that are going to be looking at both face-to-face and the virtual environment they have. Sounds like I'm going around, because I am, because if there's no T-test model to what we've just created. And at this point, I honestly believe the state, even though we're still looking at that as a component, they're not making that the priority right now. We're making the priority is how do we make the best possible genuine learning that we can create in the current event that we're in the current situation that we are find ourselves.
Okay, I have one more question. How do we evaluate, or how do the teachers evaluate and actually grade those students? Because are they able to collect or print the work of those students for documentation? Because, you know, at the end of the year, a lot of moms, a lot of dads can be very frustrated about grading and what happens, or the quality of the work turned in.
Dr. Hill?
So yes, absolutely. I just want to make sure I let him finish. So yes, you can interact if when the teachers will build their lessons, then they could either upload some documents that the students can fill out. It could be a project that they needed to work on, but that work will be stored and then graded by the teachers. So it's all electronic. There is a additional means that students could even take pictures of their work and upload it if they need to. They could email it to them. So I think the sky is open as far as how do we receive the work. And I believe gone are the day or the paper packets of having to deliver them, back to the school and vice versa.
Good.
Do you think it's a good idea for the teachers to bank those homeworks or results on their own computer as a teacher for future reference to?
Did you say fax? I'm sorry.
I said, is it feasible for the teachers to hold on to those work that turned in for future reference?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And it's my understanding that it will be stored in the LMS, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Dr. Groman.
Dr. Groman.
Basically, TEA is giving us an option and putting a model or a structure, and let's say it's like a Christmas tree.
Yes,
It's got
sir.
a lot of limbs on it. And we are putting a lot of little balls on all the different limbs.
Yes.
And then we're going to submit it to them, like maybe to our mother-in-law. And she comes, no, that's that's got to be over here. Mine's got to be like that. And so they're going to monitor and direct us. And so it's going to come back and say, okay, here's your tree, but if we move some things around, that's what we want you to do. And then we're going to redo the tree, and we're just going to constantly be remodeling. It's like having a cat that knocks them off and you put them back. So we've got a great plan, and still it's got to be approved by them. Okay. So
yes, sir.
They say it needs to be modified, they'll modify it for us. So we're
Yes.
just, and we've got some ornaments on their tree. we've got things that we're gonna have to work on no matter what. But any major thing, they'll come back to us and say, this is how we want it. So we're under their monitoring, conservatorship, they're watching over us and directing us. So I think we have experts that have made this up, and we're gonna always have a lot of questions. But the thing is we can correct things. We can put new ornaments. We can take that one off, and we can just modify it. But the main thing is we have to take the first step.
Yes, sir. And TEA, the feedback that we've seen, there's a couple of exemplars that TEA has posted on their website. And so there is a rubric with a Likert scale of 0 to 2 points, and they have specific look-fors. And so when TEA responds back to us, they will tell us whether we earned 0 points, 1 point, or 2 points, depending upon these categories. And then they'll give us specific feedback on, why we got a certain rating, and then what we need to do to, make it better or make it more robust. Yes, sir.
I may add, Dr. Gill, to Dr. Broman's point, is during this conversation, what we want is they've been bringing us together, and I'm going to use your tree example. They've been bringing our teams together on how to make the tree. And they've had webinars, they've had Zoom time, they've even provided us with exemplar programs and exemplar templates. So we've been part in engaging in that conversation, making the tree side by side with other districts, so that I honestly believe when we submit that, we're so competitive, we want the twos.
Absolutely.
So when we're sitting there, we're looking at what are the exemplars and how do we design that. This model, when you look at it, in reality is not going to vary based on what asynchronous plans are being submitted when you look at across the state.
Right.
They're basically something, in other words, we're not deviating out there to the direction of away from where we need to, but we are empowering our teachers to have a lot of say as to what those activities look like. But also we have to empower our parents. So when you see activity here that talks about, there's one point here that talks about physical activity, but we don't know what that is, but we can give some guidance to what that looks like for a Head Start kindergartner to a second grader. Is, do you have a swing outside? Or do you have a playground across the street? Or do you have a rubber ball that you can go out there and kick around? Is also the importance of making sure the kids get outside while they're at home to do a little bit of an activity, but that's also going to be governed by what do the kids have access to at home that the parents are able to provide. So to your example, we've been really lockstep. Dr. Hill and her team has been working closely with what does that tree look like? If I put this ornament here, is everybody else hanging an ornament there? Okay, we're going to put it there too and kind of see what that design looks like.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Trujillo, can I just clarify something in my mind? Because I look at these schedules and they look very similar to what I've seen in other districts, and and I feel like, and our purpose here, I do understand, is to approve this so we can get it off to TEA and get approved and go with it. Now, what I'd like clarified is we've got this wonderful structure here that we've compiled, but there's going to be flexibility from campus to campus according to the needs of how many parents are wanting face-to-face and such. Is that right?
Yeah, remember, we're looking at small, get it as small as possible. And that's why when you look at the high school schedule in here, they're looking at an A-B schedule.
Right, yeah.
Look at an A-B schedule, for example, they can keep it small, but what they've got is a percentage of kids coming on an A day and a percentage of kids coming on a B day because of their mass size. So look at an A-B schedule that's here, you might wind up, and this is what I was talking about the elementary principals, is we need to know what those numbers look like.
Yeah.
Kids are making the commitment of who's coming face to face and who's not. And it changes based on what they see on the news or based on what is being communicated. So it's almost a moving target, but we want to register.
And it is, and I understand, but it's like, we don't have to wait this 30 days from TEA, right? We're going to go with this because we're basically we're a week and a half away, and there's a lot of work to be done for teachers to know their
Absolutely.
enrollment and all of that. Woo.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I'm sorry. So once we submitted, and we had to submit like a letter of intent of whether or not we were going to do asynchronous or synchronous. So once we submitted the letter of intent that we wanted to do an asynchronous plan, then that's where our, grace period began for them to fund us through the end of the third 6 weeks. But it's all contingent upon, of course, whether or not this plan is approved, if that makes sense.
It does. But we're holding to the number of minutes and everything that they're wanting to see. Right. It looks like
absolutely. Yes,
looks like we've got it all.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so a couple questions here then. I'm assuming that through the LMS, tell me if I'm correct or not, if at 8 o'clock, their assignment says from 8 to 9:30, it's reading. And if it's a asynchronous where they're watching a video, that LMS will actually be able to tell that teacher whether that video was watched or not. Is that correct? That's what
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Canvas, and I'm speaking to it based on what conversations I'm
I
having
wonder
right
if
now.
they can still hear us.
Can y'all hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just, Dr. Hill froze on our screen.
Oh.
Here,
All right. So
but
that LMS will enable that teacher to know if
I can now. I wasn't able to.
Yes.
that video was watched. Okay.
And that's how, going back to Coach Vasich, when he was asking this, is how do you know if you've got kids engaged, and what are you gonna do to reach out? And that's when the teacher will know, oh, wait a minute, this person hasn't even connected
Yeah.
or done the activities. Now I can reach out to that family. There's how you're able to interact with.
So how does that work for a child who does not have connectivity in his household, and he is working, maybe he's working off one of our iPads and he's gone somewhere that there's Wi-Fi so that he could get the download, he or she could get the download. He's working on it at home, but maybe he doesn't get back to a place that has Wi-Fi for 2 or 3 days. How does that work?
Well, it's until they get the connectivity, it's not gonna upload that's there. So in the meantime, the teacher may reach out and say, listen, you don't have connection. We haven't seen an update. And then at that point, the parent can get them to a place where they can upload and get the information there.
Is that student counted absent because he didn't have connectivity that day, but 3 days later it uploads and shows that he did it? So how does the attendance work on that side of it? I know I'm asking a lot of what ifs.
No.
Nobody may know the answer to.
And in reality, that's a great question. But we also do a lot of correcting with attendance,
Okay.
even on a regular submission.
Okay.
So when we're doing this and we determine that, then we can follow the same criteria we do on a regular school year.
Okay.
So a parent will come in and say, well, my child was in school, and they bring the letters and the notes. We always have the option to go to PEEMS and make the adjustments that are there.
Okay, so you've got some flexibility.
Yeah,
It's not
Yes,
like
sir. Yes, ma'am, we do.
Yeah, we have that now.
Good.
Does that look the same in this world? That's the unknown. Because in this world, there's a lot of technology talking to each other. Canvas is based on the teacher's report on something, and then the PEEMS with regards to what we're doing with Power School, and all these programs are talking. So our PEEM folks are going to be working really hard with this in the next weeks to get everything, making sure that we've got that connectivity.
Yeah, I can see that. It's doubling down for everybody, you know, a lot.
And then I would think that if a parent doesn't have access to Wi-Fi, then maybe virtual learning shouldn't be that household's decision. There may be a family that needs to be on campus because they don't have the capabilities to download. Then I would, why keep that child at home?
I don't disagree, but, in reality, that there's probably parents out there that live in the county that don't feel safe to send their child to school, that are gonna have challenges with connectivity and may or may not come to town every day.
I will pledge that we're going to do everything we can as a district to be able to work with families, communicating, let them know, and then we can do the corrections that we need on our side. I don't want a parent switching from asynchronous because of the connectivity, the lack thereof. But it's a good point that both of you bring, and so it's on us to make it work so that we don't look at the systems are causing problems and the parents have to make decisions based on the inefficiencies of a system. And I'm not saying that our system is not efficient, it's just that we have connectivity issues here in Nacogdoches.
I think
Right.
truant officers probably would get on their bags.
And TEA does give us some guidance, and it's called an enrollment and attendance FAQ on asynchronous learners, how while they have to engage daily with the LMS by one of those three measures, the attendance doesn't necessarily have to be reported that day. So at the end of the week, like you guys were saying, I believe I was catching bits and pieces of it. At the end of the week, if a student was reliant on coming into town for a hotspot, then we could make a week's worth of attendance, maybe start on a Sunday and run through Saturday, so that it allows them an opportunity to drive into town, exchange the content on a hotspot, and then run a report and then document the attendance that subsequent week. So if that makes sense, we would be about a week behind in reporting attendance. But again, make it very clear that the student has to interact with the LMS on a daily basis.
Daily basis. That makes sense.
And it would be reported even if they didn't have internet connectivity, it would be reported because they're exchanging, either an email or, an assignment through the LMS.
Was it my understanding that you said, Dr. Hill, that at this point, we don't really have a good number in terms of how many are going to come to school and how many are going to stay home? Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
And then I think a lot of it is think about this year, we did something in this whole wonderful transition is we went to online registration. And doing the online registration just by itself creates confusion.
Right.
Because you're asking a parent, are you a returning student? Are you a new student? Well, to me, you're going into the third grade for the first time, so you're a new student. But it's you're not a new student, you're a returning student. So just the nature of the transition of going online, and we're taking it for granted that folks have connection to do online registration. So what we've got to look at, how do we efficiently adjust this in such a way that we can get folks in there? But we've got great things that we're calling. I've got one elementary campus that they've only got 10 kids. 10 families that they haven't confirmed with, and they're finding out that those parents possibly don't live here. But then the wonderful idea came from the principals that we had a conversation today is postcards. Send them home. If they come back, then we have an issue with home addresses. And then we can verify residency based on that. Or if they get there, they get instructions on what to do. And if they don't have access, then we also open up the campus and being very secure. We have parents that are coming to school right now, and they're coming in through targeted entrances, and they're helping them do the online registration at the school. So we're trying to accommodate all of that as well. The attendance, just swinging back to that as well, the commissioner realizes that there's going to be a possibility that there's going to be an issue with attendance. So he's provided us a little bit of a cushion that if our attendance this year doesn't look like it did last year, and it's considerably lower, then they're going to give us the attendance from last year. So understanding that the transition is still going to cause some hiccups, there's something that he's looking at that we won't be penalized because of things like that.
Well,
So
I'm glad
the
to
state
hear
is
that,
gonna
because
give us
that would not have been fair, knowing with the circumstances the way they are, that we're not gonna have the kind of numbers we had last year. There's no way.
Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge. Can we talk about what the hybrid schedule at the high school looks like? Is that to say, I'm kind of interpreting what I'm reading to mean that there's really not a completely virtual option for the high school? Or is that not true?
That is not true. We do still offer a remote opportunity, so 100% online. The hybrid, and that's the kind of the next agenda item, the 40% will just allow us to not offer, or basically to split our numbers in half and do an A/B schedule, but we're still offering 5 days a week of on-campus learning as well as remote learners. Does that make sense? So like at the elementary and at the middle school, we have to offer 100% on campus and then online. The waiver that you guys hopefully will approve this evening will allow us to, reduce our numbers that we're having on campus to an A-B schedule. So if it's an A week, then I would attend on campus, 3 days a week. If it's a B week, or, an A week is 3 days and then B is 2 days, and then vice versa the next week.
So on page 8, when we see that schedule in our plan here,
Yes.
that applies to 100% virtual learner?
Yes, and that's probably confusing President Fitch. And so that may be a change that I need to make and take out, to be honest with you, now that you've pointed it out like that. And so maybe the remote learners just needs to say grades 9 through 12 and not do the hybrid.
Because my next question after that was, would a remote learner be on an A-B schedule, or are they just, all right?
They should be on a 5-day a week.
Okay.
So do we want to wait and talk about that waiver till we get there, or do we want to talk about it now?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think, and let's wait until the next
Okay,
agenda
that's
item, unless it has to do with this,
That's
the plan itself.
Okay.
I was a little confused, and I think it is
Well,
because the heading there
Yeah.
made me think that, so.
I appreciate that. I was, and I know TEA will have the waiver. I just wanted to make it very clear to them, in our plan that we was going to be an AB, but that may not be the most appropriate place to put it, since this is simply our asynchronous plan. So thank you for that.
Ms. Fitz, I would like to make a motion if we would approve the asynchronous learning plan for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, Reverend, appreciate that. Do we have a second? Mr. Montoya?
Yes.
Was a second. All right, any additional discussion? Questions? Again, I just want to express appreciation. I know that this took a tremendous amount of work by teams of people on our staff, and I appreciate everyone's contribution, and I know that it's a starting point and it will change and evolve, but thank you for the effort that you put forward. With that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the plan as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Leah Beth. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, that's going to take us to the next item on our agenda, consideration of request for 40% campus hybrid instruction for 9th through 12th grade students. Dr. Hill.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the approval of the asynchronous plan. So this particular item is a waiver that, and you'll kind of see in the summary, and I apologize, I've just noticed that there's a typo. But it basically says that it will allow only the high schools that serve students in the grade 9 through 12 to establish a less than daily on-campus attendance schedule as the sole offering for students to reduce the number of individuals on a campus. And this particular hybrid schedule is only allowed for those grade spans. And so it would just be an A-B schedule. And so as I was attempting to describe earlier, it would fluctuate on whether or not I go 3 days a week or 2 days a week versus, the predominance of that particular week, if it's an A week or a B week.
So if I understand, 40% means that we would have 40% of the student population at the high school attending the AB.
I believe it refers to, you have to offer 40% of the number of days within a grading period have to be on campus learning.
That's for
Okay.
The entire student body, right?
Yes,
Okay,
for the high school.
for the high school.
But this is not necessarily talking about students itself.
Yes, sir, it's the number of days. So on that second attachment, you've got it looks like this, forgive me. In that narrative at the very top, it specifically talks about the LEA must ensure that on-campus attendance is offered as part of the hybrid schedule at least 40% of the days in each grading cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 50% of our students will be put like on an A schedule where they'd meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then the other half of our students would be on the B schedule. They'd meet Tuesday, Thursday. And then the next week it flips.
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mhm,
And when
mhm.
you say 50% of the students, that would be 50% of the students that are choosing on-campus learning as their option.
Okay.
And so like right now, just to give you an idea, and these are approximates, they're not exacts, but approximately 46% of high school students who have gone through the registration process are requesting on campus, and approximately 38% are requesting remote. And we have about 16% that haven't responded.
And during those first 4 weeks of school, for those that are requesting on campus, AB, I assume then they're not everybody's going to show up day one on August 31st, correct? There's going to be some kind of notification to the families of.
Yes, ma'am. Of which students are A students or B students. Yes, ma'am.
And when that you're supposed to show up.
That is correct.
Okay.
I do not believe that's been determined yet on which students and how they're going to divide that.
Okay.
So,
You know, this doesn't have anything to do with us approving this or not. I just want to make this comment so that anyone else listening to this can appreciate how complicated this is, because this is also going to involve transportation and the bus figuring out these, you know, these people I'm picking up on the A and these on the B. And
That's a
oh
great
my goodness.
Yes, ma'am. And even from our food nutrition standpoint too. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
A number
food
of meals
nutrition.
to prepare. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Ugh.
very multifaceted. So thank you for recognizing that.
We have to thank our teachers because sometimes they have to carry extra loads as well.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
I kind of, Leah Beth started out talking about something that concerned me when I saw that, is you're gonna have something going on different every week. And so you're gonna have a different group of kids on Monday, Wednesday, Friday versus Tuesday, Thursday every week. You're not gonna have the same kids on Monday every week, like you would in a college.
Right.
Right.
So you do have the transportation that's gotta remember that pickup schedule.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I will tell you as a parent, that would, I barely could keep up with Monday through Friday. And all the activities my kid had, and the many times I had to take drill team hats and boots back up to the school. That
I
kind of
know.
freaked me out seeing that, because originally I had seen something put out where it was just AB would be Monday, Friday, and the other would be Tuesday, Thursday, and Wednesday was designated as.
Yeah, that's the traditional AB. Yeah. But
Yes.
this is, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was surprised when I saw this, and because I had gotten so many positive comments about that Wednesday, because I'm also concerned about our CTE kids. They're wanting to do home learning. Wednesday would be a really great day for them to be able to come on and do their hands-on. I know that learning can't be done without hands-on. So if they're wanting to really avoid other kids, that would have been a really great day for that, as well as some of the other things that could be done as far as tutorials. But that flip-flopping schedule really concerns me from many aspects. I'm curious what happened to that original idea, because it sounded to kind of meet a whole bunch of needs in the middle. And I really do love, from a safety perspective, that you only have half the kids there at any given time. Because you just reduce that risk of being exposed by so much by having smaller classes, smaller people, going through the school. So, I mean, I'm just curious about that change and why, kind of why we decided to do that flip-flop schedule.
Dr. Hill, this is Dr. Grumman. Didn't we start working on this in the high school at the end of the year last year, like May or June? We've been talking about this for several months.
I don't know if it's been, several months, Dr. Groman. I know it's been within the last month. And then whenever it was that TEA released this, potential for us to do a hybrid, because initially it was that we were going to have to offer, 5 days on campus as well as on, remote. So we were glad to know that they at least came out with this potential waiver for us. So I'm not sure, maybe I just wasn't involved in some of those conversations since the end of last year. But I know the emphasis has always been on, reducing the number of students because the high school is so large at any one time to allow for, social distancing and things of that nature. So to the point of why it changed, when you think about the CTE opportunities, there's no reason why, just like the fine arts students are coming up during their designated class period, there's no reason why the CTE students still can't come and do it's the same expectation for fine arts. Even though that during the schedule, fine arts may be scheduled at the end of the day, we would have to look at the master schedule and when those students are scheduled and coming in. But again, if we're asking fine arts to come up, I don't know why we wouldn't ask the same for CTE. And so TEA has listed some requirements, or not some requirements, but given us a list of CTE courses and or just fine arts courses or co-curricular courses that may be expected to have some on-campus learning opportunities. And so we're currently working with the high school to really delineate that list and look very carefully, because we may have some students of whether they're fine arts and or CTE that say, my student is not going to come to on-campus learning. And so what that would do, even from a fine arts perspective too, and fine arts is a part of graduation requirements where CTE is not necessarily. You do have to do endorsements. You do have to do coherent sequence. I get that aspect of it. But so we're looking at what's going to be equal. When you think about the Wednesdays too, I want us to keep in mind is for those students who are electing to do on campus, that's one less day they're going to have instruction. And when you think about providing an equitable learning environment, when you think maybe some of our students who are requesting on campus may not have the tools and the means to do it remotely. So those are the kids that need 5 full days of face-to-face instruction. And then when you think about the CTE students, if we're looking at the percentage of students, which is about 38%, who are wanting remote instruction, what is that percentage? It's even going to be a smaller subset that are CTE students. And so we've not offering on-campus learning, but then we're limiting it even to a significantly smaller group for those remote CTE students.
I mean, I see your point, but every other week you're not going to get 5 full days. You're still getting the 40% if you're attending 2 out of the 5 days. And I'm just concerned that flipping that schedule is going to be very difficult for teachers and students and parents. And I'm just wondering what happened to that, because I think it had even been kind of put out there to parents, which got a lot of the positive feedback on it.
It did, but that did not come to you all for approval.
Yeah,
and that was the process, is it was supposed to have gone through the appropriate channels, and it did not.
Okay, I mean, given that, but I still am concerned about the flip-flopping schedule.
I think, Mindy, that, we're on such new territory here, but I'm just thinking, okay, what if I was still in the classroom and all of a sudden I had to do this? A lot of it's going to be, your mindset is going to stretch how long it takes to master a skill. Whereas maybe normally you were thinking in terms of a week, but now you have to think in terms of 2 weeks so that the whole group has had the same amount of time of instruction. Mm-hmm. And so it's just gonna be challenging to teachers, but it's gonna be just a different time frame that they're gonna have to put things into. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, I think you're kind of saying that instead of looking at it as a week, you kind of have to you have to kind of look at it as 2 weeks. Over a 2-week period, you're getting 5 days of that instruction.
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking at it as a parent trying to keep up with getting my kid on the right day.
Yeah.
And I mean,
right.
You got transportation that have to remember to pick up the kids on the right day.
Yeah. That's going to be a humdinger.
I mean, and then one's in junior high. I mean,
That's an interesting question, and for parents of multiples, I'm sure some accommodation
Great.
can be made.
Yeah.
They're on the same schedule, I would hope.
Well, and this throws the AB schedule, when you look at the traditional AB schedule that you run, this throws the baby in the water out completely. Because typically, high school it's not unusual for them to have an AB day,
No.
but it's 90 minutes. It's extended amount of time. So we're not doing what Leah Beth is talking about. It's all in a week and everybody's getting the time. But because we're still keeping to the traditional schedule of the 7-period day in a AB schedule, it really stretches that out to the 2 weeks. And that's why I have to believe that's why the state arrived with 4 weeks. Because if you look at 4 weeks and it's an even number and you're able to stretch that out and get your numbers to what it has, so that you can meet the needs that are there. And that's the dilemma that we're faced with when it comes to the current nature of what we're talking about with regards to AB.
The other point is about the Wednesday, and it kind of goes along with some discussions that we've had earlier today, is that we hope that one day the coronavirus will settle down and we will get back to somewhat normal. So like second semester, and I know it's a big if we were to have more remote learners choosing to do face-to-face, then what is it that we do with that Wednesday? And so, Ms. Abt, to your point about being multifaceted with transportations, we're talking about redoing food and nutrition. We're talking about redoing the master schedule, building it in PowerSchool, in PEAMS, submitting that to TEA. You're talking about transportation. So it's more than just a quick, let's just undo what we've been doing for a semester.
Yeah.
That I would really like for us to take into consideration. And Dr. Trujillo, to your point, you're correct. It's not uncommon for some high schools to have this AB day, for sure. And we did check with some of our local high schools, especially the one to our south, and they are not considering doing an AB. They are doing a normal high school schedule, and the students are choosing on campus or remote.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is the same for, I believe, Tyler and Longview.
Wow.
And and Pine Tree as well. So, yeah.
But let me say why we are looking at this. Remember, our commitment is small numbers of kids.
Yeah.
We've got to think of the safety of our students, but also the safety of our teachers when we're looking at this. That's why we're looking at this. That are there.
I commend you for that.
I applaud
Yeah.
it. My favorite part of this.
That is the most pivotal point for us.
And I think it's a great plan. I just am having an issue with the flip-flopping, and I'm really having a hard time. As a parent, I'm just having a hard time seeing, I mean, I liked the concept that I read about on the Wednesdays and what it afforded so many people, including the teachers and the tutorials and the opportunity for interventions. I like the idea that that would be a great time for the people that are doing the homeschooling to come on campus and things that they need. Because I will tell you, sometimes you just need a sit down with the teacher, and that would be one thing that you don't have anybody else on campus except these opportunities. So I'm kind of sitting here a little passionate about that, and that's why. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to get my kid out. I'll never remember that. I just know, and I knew my kid.
My charge to the team when we were looking at this was, and I say this very cautiously, is I'm sick and tired of living in fear of what we've got to plan for. What does it look like when we get around the corner of this whole situation? So one day very soon, we're going to get to something that's going to be amazing, and we're going to get back to this new. And when we get to that new, how do we transition any schedule we have so it doesn't skip a beat and we can go straight to what the school looks like? And having a Wednesday where they're coming out, it is so far removed from the schedule that at that point, it would be a complete revamp. And now at that point, honestly, we would be having another battle. The battle would be, why aren't we moving this? Why aren't we keeping it the same? Well, it was never meant to be that. It was meant to be an adjustment. And so to prepare our teachers for that transition to when we get to back to life after COVID-19, we've got to be able to do something to give us a smooth transition so it would happen. So we don't set up a new practice of disrupting because the scope and sequence is not designed that way and that we've created. We're adapting it to make it fit right now, but for the long term, how does that make it happen? It's unfortunate that I will tell you, I didn't see that plan. That plan did not sit in front of me. That plan did not go through the motions of the approval process. I got wind of that plan when it hit the public. And that's an unfortunate situation. And now we have to work on why are we not going with that plan? There's a lot of great ideas, but the great ideas have to go through a process of vetting it because there's a method as to why we're doing it and getting to that point of what needs to happen. And I'm gonna own that one because that one got out there. But I will tell you is I'm looking for what's after COVID-19 when we hit the button and say, now we're going to go full, everybody's coming online. And yes, President Fitch, I'm hoping that down the road, we're gonna have everybody back in school and we've got everything going. And now we're gonna get to the traditional things that we concern ourselves with high school. But that's the part that I'm looking at is trying to make sure that this happens so that we can have a plan for it. And I don't want to muddle the water any, but you have to think, AB plan has been designed for high school. But I'm going to tell you that that's something that I'm having conversations with our elementary people. Because how do you control the numbers of kids coming into a school? And I just want to make sure that our public understands this and sees it, that our commitment is any child that wants to be face-to-face, we have to provide them that opportunity. But I also have to protect my teachers in this district because we've made a commitment that we're going to keep the numbers small. So we got to do this very carefully when we bring the kids in. So there may be a possibility when we're talking about a campus that has 800 kids, that if 70% of them want face-to-face, we're going to have to be very creative on the campus to say, what does that look like? Because now a teacher walking in and she's got 17 kids in a room on the first week of school is not what we said we were going to do. So how do we adjust that? So even though the state is telling us AB Day is a hybrid model for the high school, I'm having this conversation on what does that look like for elementary when we finally find out how many kids are going to come to the campus. Our little ones, they'll be able to make it happen. But the bigger ones is the ones that I'm concerned with what that makes it look like. And I don't want to muddle the water with the AB, but the AB is it's a great model. If it was the traditional AB, I would love it because it'd be an opportunity to do something. But it's not. It's a hybrid. It's 7-period day and an AB schedule. It's a little quirky. So.
I'll say this, and I'll open it up for a motion. But I trust the educational leaders of this district, and I trust that you guys have studied and bring this forward because you believe this is the best plan for our students. It's going to be a little complicated for moms. I'd probably be one kind of pulling my hair out as well, but at the end of the day, I trust your leadership as the educational leader of our district. I'll tell you one thing I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years as we have pulled this district and its student performance up tremendously is that every minute of instruction matters. And it's extremely hard to make up a lost minute. So by having that AB schedule and getting those kids on a full 5 days of face-to-face instruction over a 2-week period, I think that those minutes are valuable and worth doing.
Dr. Drummond, I think that something that we have to think about is that Nacogdoches Independent School District is going to offer every single student, every single family, the best we have to offer, which is the expertise and skill of our teachers and all of the support personnel we have. And I don't care if they're face-to-face or virtual, we will give them the best instruction we can, and we will advance their education if they're willing to work with us and be patient. We will get this done working together.
With that being said, Ms. Fitch, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the submission of the 40% campus hybrid instruction for the 9th through the 12th grade students, the waiver to TA.
Thank you, Reverend Urban. Do we hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Nearmont. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo the same thing that Fitch said. We trust you, we follow you, and I know we're headed the right direction.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to our final item on the agenda tonight. I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, I didn't know where we were, I'm sorry.
I was going back to look at that.
I'm moving adjourned.
All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Winslow, it's seconded by Mr. Montoya. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank y'all so much. We will be back
See you later,
here.
Leah Beth. Be careful on the way home.
Okay, thanks.
Leah, will you be zooming in with us Thursday, or will you be with us Thursday?
I will. I'm sorry. It's a full week that we're, so I'll zoom in on Thursday.
All right. Sounds good.
And okay, good.
See
Thank
Thursday.
you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Bye-bye.